James Lupton, delighted to be joined on Zoom with Eddie Hearn. Eddie, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Thanks for joining me today. I want to sort of try something a little bit different, get to know Eddie Hearn. First of all, you started off golf to poker to boxing. What about boxing made you fall in love with it?
I fell in love with boxing when I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, really. A lot of people say boxing's in your blood, but I think if it's in your blood, you're kind of born with it through generations. But it wasn't really in my dad's blood either. He just found boxing. He was a chartered accountant who stumbled into snooker, met Steve Davis, then took over the sport and managed basically every big name player there was. And then randomly just thought I'd quite like to do a fight. And his first fight was Frank Bruno against Joe Bugner at White Hart Lane. Didn't know what he was doing. Just approached the fighters without going through any management or promoters, drove everyone mad and got it off the ground. And from there, I went on and had a really successful career. So that was like, I was 9 years old then. And over the next probably 5 or 6 years, kind of spent that time traveling with him and being around people like Eubank and Naz and Lennox and Bruno and even like lesser named fighters really that become sort of quite heroic to me, like Jim McDonnell and Francis Ampofo and like a lot of the matchroom fighters. Um, and really from the age of probably 8 or 9 to 15, I was obsessed with boxing, studied it. I had a couple of gym bouts myself at an amateur club, just studied British boxing yearbooks, records, opponents, styles, everything. And then got to kind of 15, 16 and started going out and enjoying myself. And then my dad sort of lost a little bit of heart with boxing, really. I think it's a very frustrating business and it can, it can make you miserable, can make you angry, can give you a hump. And I think he just thought, what, I'm going to go and do some darts. It's a lot easier. So once he moved away from boxing, I never really, and even when I was studying boxing, I never thought, oh, I want to be a promoter. I want to do what my dad does. The business of matchroom was always a lot bigger than just boxing, but it was a big part of it. And when I left college, I didn't really want to work for him because everyone just presumed I would work for him. So I went into athlete representation. I was a sports agent, represented a lot of athletes and then particularly golfers on the PGA Tour, European Tour as well, traveled around America with them. And then started to come back into the matchroom business. And then was the explosion of poker. And we became the biggest producer of televised poker events. So all the poker you used to see on TV was us. And then, as you know, met Audley Harrison and kind of we were just doing prize fire at the time. Sky had four promoters: Matchroom, Frank Warren, Frank Maloney, and Ricky Hatton. And we we didn't have any fighters. We were just using them. It was really for my dad's old mates to give them a couple of slots on the shows. They were terrible. The shows, awful. Actually, every show that was on was awful. And I came back with Audley and Enterprise Fire and just felt that there was an opportunity to get that exclusive deal with Sky because I thought everything was so poor. And I just felt that boxing, I remembered growing up going to the Eubank shows or the Naz shows, and I just felt like, where on earth has boxing gone? We're sitting here in a leisure centre in Wigan, no disrespect to Wigan, and it's not like this sport doesn't have potential. It's not like this sport's not great. Just no one's trying. And, the rest is history.
You mentioned he was about 9 years old when your dad promoted his first fight. It might have been a little bit earlier than that as well, when he was on the phone to the likes of Don King and Bob Arum.
Mm.
How aware was you at that time of what he was doing with those guys?
Well, I wasn't aware of who they were, but I was aware of the voices because at home we had a main line and an answer phone. And my mum always made sure that every business call, unless it was someone really important, and very few people had the house line, but they would phone the answer phone. And it would say, please leave your message after a beep. And I would hear the voices. It could be Bob Arum, it could be Don King, it could be Pepe Forbes, one of my dad's old matchmakers who would call every night, Don Majeski, people like this. And those voices would I'd hear them every night, 5 or 6 times. And my dad would choose which one to pick up as they left a message, and it was most of them. So I got, as a kid, he was very good because when he was around, which wasn't a great deal, but when he was around, the first thing he would do is go and give me an hour in the garden playing cricket or football. But then he would go into his study and work on boxing. And I would sit in the study, and I would just listen and muck around, not consciously listening, just subconsciously sitting there. And I remember a lot of arguments. He's a completely different person now than he was when he worked in boxing. God, he had a terrible temper when he was in boxing, because it's just what he does to you, And but he grew up. The first thing he did was pissed off Mickey Duff and Jarvis Astaire because of the Frank Bruno fight, and then ended up becoming rivals with Warren and Arum and King and all that lot.
For yourself, Eddie, very successful within boxing. In the social media era, nobody really shows the negatives or the failures. What's been your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
I don't know, failure. I mean, I don't feel there's been many failures, but I feel like there's been a lot of dark times. It just comes mainly through bad luck more than anything. I mean, boxing's very unforgiving as a sport and unforgiving as a business, where you can be so deep into a show and then you just get the call. Could be an injury, could be someone stolen a fighter, could be a drugs test, and you're 2 or 3 weeks out. You've got a sold out venue, you're hundreds of thousands of pounds deep in costs, and you've got to try and resurrect it. And I think that it sounds a bit cheesy, but there's nothing that makes me happier than delivering a good show. And sometimes, in the event of a pullout, you have to make a decision. Do you go ahead with an average show, or do you just can it? And I think I've only canned probably one show in about 12 years, because I hate doing it, because all these guys, they only get paid when they fight. So, I don't think there's been many failures. I think all the moves have been, I think maybe when we went into America, we had a decision to go in quietly or all guns blazing, and I chose the latter. But you can't really apologize for being you. I think I've chilled out over the years. Definitely still fiery, but not nowhere near as fiery as I used to be, and sort of definitely more diplomatic now. And maybe when you talk about failures, I guess you could talk about AJ against Wilder or AJ against Fury not happening, but we've still got time. And that certainly wasn't my fault or our fault, but probably collectively there was ego and errors made on both sides to make fights like that.
You get a lot of stick. Whenever you come up on big screen, you get your boos. When you get in the ring, you get your boos from the crowd. Have you ever received an insult that's made you proud?
Proud? I guess everything. Do you know what? Like, you can sit there and say, it doesn't bother me. I don't care. I've got thick skin, and I've got really thick skin. Like, you have to. But it's never nice to get loads of stick. And sometimes, you look at some of these accounts on Twitter, and every now and again, like, one will pop up that just is non-stop. And I sometimes go on their tweets and I read through them, and it's like the whole day is about me or my family or my, the business, and it's like, firstly, you think, God, just tell me who it is, But secondly, you think there's an agenda out there, It's that I don't believe that is some random fight fan in a 9 to 5, that just, or whatever, that just sits there all day. That's part of the system really that's out to try and. When I came into the sport, and it's quite funny, because sometimes I look at Ben Shalom in the same way. There was an agenda, and there isn't one for him yet, because I don't think he's of that level yet where people are actually concerned. But when I came into the sport, there was a big agenda to get me out. If you remember, there was a picture when I got the exclusive deal with Sky where Barry McGuigan, Frank Warren, Ricky Hatton, and I think Frank Maloney at the time all came around with their hands in a circle, put it all in and said, we are getting together on Box Nation and it was all that was it's time to try and fuck Eddie Hearn. legal letters every day, you know, just pressure, pressure, pressure. And that's the old school technique, you know, apply pressure, they'll crack, they won't be able to handle it. And most people probably wouldn't, but it turned me the other way. You know, it made me more determined. And, you know, the insults and stuff like that online, I don't know. I think I'd be lying if I said I love it. You know, I love these. But it just shows if you've got haters that you know, you're doing well and stuff like that. The reality is you want to be loved by everybody. You know, you want it. You want pats on the back because I work hard. And that's what I say about shows, genuinely, you know, although Lee Wood lost on Saturday, people walk away, I went down to the gym tonight. So I really enjoyed that. Sat there from start to finish. Really good fights. Him, and the main event, great. That's my customers. So that's what makes me happy. So yeah, the insults, I don't know, you know, I never take them too well. I don't read anywhere near as many comments as I used to. I've turned most of them off, but every now and again you have a little peek, and it does, you know, really baffle me.
Do you feel you're misunderstood?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I think misunderstood in terms of my passion for boxing. Like a lot of what you see, I mean, really what you see with me is what you get. I'm a salesman, right? I exaggerate, I hype shows, but I speak my mind. And I think when you talk about misunderstood, I think people sometimes misunderstand, or you know, a better word might be sort of that they don't necessarily appreciate my love for the sport, you know. And yeah, we're a business, we want to make money, but we do care. And I think some people just sort of see you as like Dr. Evil trying to control the sport. And, you know, I do loads at grassroots level, but every time I do it, England Boxing or the clubs want to document it, you know, and they want it on social media. And then when that happens, it's, oh, yeah, look at her and look, trying to get a few brownie points, like not being funny. I ain't got a lot of spare time. So I'm really not going to just go to some random club in Leeds and just spend an hour and a half there talking to the kids. I like doing it. It makes me feel good, you know, and I know what these clubs do for young kids. And I feel like as I get older, I will be doing more and more of that, because I actually am blessed with the opportunity, not like a big fighter, but blessed with the opportunity to maybe change the direction of someone's life. Because I know the power of fighters, people, you know, with profile, who one conversation with a young kid can help them and change their mindset and change their life. And I know that, and your parents can't do it, because I've got two kids. I know, I don't know, one's mad on football, one's mad on TikTok, and I know that if Harry Kane sat down with my youngest and said to her, "You just got to do this, you got to, you know, it could change her life," and that's a blessing, really. So yeah, misunderstood maybe just through my love of boxing, really.
You mentioned there about the next generation and being an influence on those guys. And we've all mentioned about your dad and how much of an influence he was on you. Tell me, say, the three most influential people in your life and why they were so influential for you.
Obviously my dad. I mean, my dad drives me mad because he just doesn't stop, you know. And he is also, and he, you know, he won't mind, he's money mad. Money mad. You know, I said to my mum the other day, you know, Dad, you know, it's not the amount of money, it's more, you know, I always say in interviews, life for us is sport. Not just being part of sport, but we see it as sport. So it's competition. And it's all about winning. So if he sets financial targets, it's not necessarily the value of that target. It's just, we've got to hit it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like you get halfway through the year and he might look and say, oh, you know, what's happening there? We're a bit down. Oh. It's like, but he won't stop. And he comes from nothing, from no money. And I said to my mum the other day, you know, Daddy's obsessed with money. And she's like, he always has been. You know, even when he had none. he was obsessed with money, you know. And again, it's not the value of the money, how much it is. Could be 1 million, could be 400 million. It's just winning and hitting those targets. That's his version of sport. So he was very influential on me. My mum, massively influential, because they're two completely different characters. You know, like, I think she would drive an extra 10 miles to get 10p off a packet of ham. Do you know what I mean? And he would literally just not drive and pay an extra 100 quid for a packet of ham, kind of thing. So she's kept that sort of sanity through his success. Yeah, other people, I mean, you know, I think the world has changed so much. And you look at the older generation, like I look at my nan and my granddad, you know, both out of the East End, just proper old school people with unbelievable values, you know. And my dad always laughs at me because he might phone me up and say, "Where are you?" And I'll say, I'm in the supermarket just getting some food. He goes, "What? In a supermarket?" You know, and it's like only now has he started cooking. But like that generation, it was like the woman just, you know, looks after the man, and the man goes out and earns the money. They're very simple lives, you know. And now the world has completely changed, and I think it's a good thing. So yeah, they were pretty influential to me as well. But a lot of the fighters that I met have been influential to me, you know. Not just the ones that I grew up around, but the ones that I work with. You know, Anthony Joshua, Carl Froch, and even people in, you know, Tony Sims, you know, just good people around the sport. I think in boxing, as frustrating as it is sometimes and as shit as the business can be, there's a lot of great people in boxing. And that's been one of the best blessings is being around good people and sharing great times.
Fast forward, say 20, 30, 40 years, looking back on your career, how do you want to be remembered?
I don't know. I mean, the worry is that because of the perception of who you are or what you do when you're at the top, sometimes you never really get the credit of being a good person and loving the sport. So that's why, you know, when the work that I do in the community now, that's not about proving to people that I'm a good person, but I think the older I get, I want to be remembered as the greatest promoter of all time. I mean, that would be the first thing, but things like that only happen when you're dead, you know, when you go. I was sort of saying to someone the other day, you know, someone passed and I said, you know, all these amazing, wonderful things that we say about people when they pass, we never said it to them when they were here, you know? And I think I want to be remembered for someone that gave back as well to the sport. And I think I'd like to be remembered as someone that showcased boxing within the community and how it can change people's lives and the influential role it can play. I'd like to change people's minds about boxing. Parents, you know, I sometimes go up and if one of my daughters is playing football or whatever it is, I talk to some of the parents, and you know, she goes to a very nice school, and I'll say, you know, you should get your little one down the boxing club. And they're like, okay, righto, you know. And I said, I don't say it to them. I think you have no idea, like, and it's not having my daughter or son punched in the head. So you don't have to. You don't have to spar. My daughter don't spar yet. But she goes down there for an hour and a half and leaves absolutely soaked in sweat and just feeling really positive and confident and a part of something, you know. But it's just that perception. That's why the funding is always a struggle at government level, because they don't know. You know, the ones that do go down, they do help because they see it firsthand.
Absolutely. One question away from the boxing, what would you say has been your biggest achievement outside of the sport or all sport in general?
I mean, obviously, you know, you talk about becoming a father. That's a big moment in any man or woman's life, and that's challenging. you know, especially with one teenage daughter and one 10-year-old who are obsessed with the phones, you know. And I've actually become now, I must be boring the life out of people because I'm talking about the danger of these phones and social media and algorithms and all this information and negativity that's infiltrating the mind of the next generation. You know, I don't want to sound like Andrew Tate or Carl Froch, but it's like I was actually talking to Froch about it on Saturday, and you know, as wild as some of his conspiracy theories are, this is fact. You know, it's terrible what the kids are digesting now in terms of information and content, and I'm really concerned about that generation. So I think outside of business, yeah, that I think there's a lot to do. I probably lived quite a selfish life for the last 10 or 12 years in terms of business, and, you know, obviously family as well. But like in terms of what I could be giving back, you know, and now we've got 40 staff worldwide. Frank Smith's doing more and more and taking more responsibility. I do have capacity to do a little bit more to help. So I think that we're really proud. We have something called the Matchroom Sport Charity Foundation, which we've donated well over £1 million in the last couple of years to local charities or anybody that writes in children's hospices and stuff like that. And that's important to us to give back as well, because obviously we've done very well and we're doing very well. And we don't, like, that's the thing with me and my dad. We're not lavish, really. You know, like, I know it sounds a bit naff, but tomorrow I'll jump on a train at Billericay and I'll go up to Liverpool Street and I'll pop on the tube over to the West End for my meetings. I don't have a Rolls Royce Phantom sitting outside with a bloke with a hat going, "Good morning, Mr. Hearn. Where are we going to?" And same with my old man. Same with him. He just wanders around with his briefcase around the tube. Like, we don't have planes, we don't have yachts, we don't have, like, it's just, so the money, we've done well. And we, like, you know, we've got enough money to be able to give back and make a difference. I think that's a nice thing to be able to do.
You mentioned there, obviously, about almost being grounded yourself and your dad, and obviously you was born into your dad, who was, you know, a good businessman. But your dad wasn't born into money. Your dad grew up a poor kid. He's told me that himself. Do you think that's why he is still so grounded now and doesn't have those lavish luxuries, like you mentioned, a Rolls Royce and a plane or whatever else?
Mate. Yeah. I mean, I'm more lavish than him, but still, for what I could be, I'm totally grounded in that respect. I think when you come from nothing like he did, you automatically have greater value for money and for things. You know, but everything's about levels. So I grew up in a mansion, you know, the Matchroom HQ. So for me, that was normality. So where do you go from there? You know, whereas he grew up in Dagenham in a council flat and shared a room with his siblings, and he walks around now at his house. We go for a walk and he's got, I don't know, 300 acres, and he's 75 years old. And he goes to me, "Look at this. I can't believe it. I can't believe it." And I'm so jealous. You know, I look at him, I think, that must be the greatest feeling. It's really the one thing, and I can't say I was deprived of because I've been very lucky, but I'll never get to feel that. You know, I can appreciate my achievements and I've done great, but I did have a leg up. No point saying that I didn't, because I did, but I played the hand like a blinder. But what a feeling to be able to walk around and look at what he's got and realise that his dad was a bus driver, his mum was a cleaner, and look at what he's achieved. Must be an unbelievable feeling.
Definitely. If there's one thing you could change about boxing, what would it be and why?
I think that everybody that works in a business has to act with common sense and actually with a business strategy, because the problem with the sport is it's full of people that either don't know what they're doing or don't care what they're doing. So it's very difficult. I mean, we are really the only promotional company that has had continuous profitability and a solid business foundation over. I mean, everybody else has gone skin. They've lost a couple of million. They've made a little bit. They've gone skin and wound up a company. They've gone back. I mean, so that's what you're competing with. So you're not competing with everybody with a solid base and a business acumen that is just running the business like it should be run. You are dealing with people that come in and go, I don't care. And all of a sudden, some investor pops up. How much is in? Oh, he's just got 20 million of investment. So he's going to go and give Terence Crawford 6 or 7 million to fight David Avanesian or whatever it is, So that's like, it really is the Wild West in that respect. And the unbelievable thing about boxing is there are no barriers to entry. You could meet someone tomorrow, a very wealthy individual that goes, I like you, James. I think that actually you could be our guy. Next thing, you're a massive advisor with huge funding, or you want to become a promoter or even a fighter, and it's like, you see people pop up. I have to negotiate with them. Could be lawyers, could be managers who know absolutely nothing about boxing. I think my man's worth a lot more than that. Really? In what respect? He doesn't sell a fucking ticket. No one tunes in to watch him. So how can you sit here and tell me he's worth that much? Well, and that's the frustrating thing. It drives you mad. But that's why you're never safe. And that's why it's a great leveler, the boxing business, because you can never become complacent. Because when you've got everybody by the bollocks, some lunatic comes in with a load of money that's not theirs and just goes, right, come on then, spend. And you're like, what's happening now? And like, you've got a situation even now. Purses are out of control in terms of the value of the fighters. Great for the fighters, good luck to them. But it just means that people go skin because the model's wrong. But you have to decide which ones do you want to compete with and which ones do you go, off you go. And it's been an interesting few months.
Fantastic. Well, Eddie, I won't keep you no longer. Thank you very much for your time. I'm glad the graphic worked. It's good speaking.
Nice. Cheers, James. Take care of yourself, mate. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye.